Nuts. Nuts. Hey, what's good, folks? Hey, if you're out there and you can hear me, go ahead and put one in the chat, or just let me know if my mic's on. Is my mic on? That's priority. Well, actually, my mic must be on, but my camera is not in focus. But hey, in the meantime, hey, thank y'all for joining Talk Politics, where you don't just listen to the news, but indeed help make it. Thanks to the people out there who have contributed to growing our program. We definitely appreciate your support. Thank you, Chris, Monica, Pete, Matthew, and Bill. If you guys want to continue to support independent media and have independent thought grow and flourish, make sure to go to etsy.com/shop/talk politics. Doing so, you can get a mug. Each mug out there helps us reach an additional at least 10 people. So if you could go out there and support us, that would be cool. And hey, would go a long ways to dismantling a crooked media that's not covering many of the subjects that we're covering, like tonight, covering what's going on with the FTC. Currently, we have a big showdown, FTC versus Twitter. After Elon Musk bought Twitter, the FTC is now asking for more data from Twitter. We will get to that. We also have another great section on foreign policy. Hey, good to hear from you, Dylan. Nice to know that you are alive out there. I hope you're doing well. And like always, good to hear from you. We also have a lot of news going on with China. Interested in talking about that. An update on the Nordstream pipeline. But first, we have what it is that you guys want to talk about in Pulse of the People. And what I thought about doing here is if you guys are interested in watching, make sure to just, hey, mention in the chat what it is then that you want to talk about. I'll be happy to talk about that as well, in addition to the topics that we have in our Public Talk Politics page. So definitely interested in hearing what you guys have to say. What's the biggest political story on your mind that has not been addressed? If you're listening, go ahead and type that in the chat. We'll talk about it here tonight. But without further ado, we will get to Pulse of the People. Hey, we're talking about what it is that you guys want to talk about with our Pulse of the People segment. And we are good to have that back and going. Hey, thank you all new people joining. We're in the Pulse of the People segment. If there's anything here that I didn't cover that you want to talk about, go ahead and drop that in the chat. We'll make sure to, Pulse, yeah, hey, good to know you're listening, Matt. If there's something then that we missed that we didn't get to, we want to hear from you. Make sure to make your voice heard in our chat. Speaking of making your voice heard, my good friend Liz Terwilliger up in Bradford County, her and another friend of mine named Steven pointed out something that should all concern us: Congress ignoring the elephant in the room. And this is after the State of the Union, and some people were cheering. Hey, yeah, that's always a good subject we're talking about, Matt. And I will most definitely cover that. Stick around, we'll get to that question at the end here. So Congress ignores the elephant in the room, as they've continued to do, and I'm so grateful that Liz brought this up in our Public Talk Politics group, that since 1935, the Social Security office began without funding or staff, and yet, fast forward to now, Social Security is broken. As Liz pointed out, administrators like to describe Social Security as some sort of savings account. Of course, there is no such account, and instead, as she correctly points out, that money is being collected and then dispersed to people who are already collecting that existed entitlement. And the reason why this is so problematic is because you have people think, well, hey, I paid for Social Security. Well, no, actually you didn't. As Liz mentioned, once collected, our Social Security payroll taxes belong to the government and not us. So we have a broken Social Security system where people are conned into thinking that they're actually paying money into something, when in reality the government's taking that money, they're blowing it, and then ultimately at the end of the day they're not being responsible. We have a president who laughs about how everyone agrees Social Security and Medicare is off the books now, and so this we're going to have an automatic cut of Social Security in under 10 years, or if we don't, we're going to have more tax. And the problem is, Liz points out, what have either member of both parties done to help address this substantial problem? Back in 1995 to about 2005, reform was needed then. Now that group's already going to be covered under a vast entitlement program that we have really no way to address. If we try to cut it, people will be paranoid about that. And then if we make any sensible changes to it, people will decry that as a scam. And so this could very well be one of the many challenges that ultimately undoes our republic fundamentally. You combine this crazy Social Security spending. You have Social Security, Medicare, according to this chart right here, taking up 51% of our spending. You combine that with our meddling in endless overseas war, making tensions with China worse, and it looks like we're essentially doomed, and things are going to be much, much worse than what anybody anticipated. If you think that we had a Great Depression in the past and that will never resurface, you're going to be wrong. Now, Liz mentions there's a couple options then that you can do as a policymaker to help right the ship in this situation. You can raise the Social Security entitlement age from 62 to 67. You can make it actually into a mandatory private savings account, which you do have in some places where people are mandated to save, and then that money actually comes out to them like what people think this system does. There's systems that actually do that. And at the end of the day, none of that's going to happen. This leaves Congress to do their job and work on a topic that no one wants to talk about. Failure to act decisively only delays the inevitable day when a retiree's benefits will resemble what that invisible pachyderm receives: peanuts. Excellent article by Liz. I would encourage any of you guys, if you haven't read it, to actually subscribe to her work. Hey, thank y'all for joining. To the new person who joins, we're just talking about Pulse of the People, talking about the things that you want to talk about. We were going over what Liz Terwilliger in our Public Talk Politics group just mentioned to us about Social Security and how that's an issue that's not really being covered. I also invited people to, if you are just joining us, hey, let us know what's on your mind other than the topics we have here. Matt, for example, asked, well, what is a better way to help candidates instead of fighting with people on Facebook? No, that's a good question, Matt. So Matt asked this in our chat right over here. And really, the best way to help candidates is to actually go out and do something for them. We need fewer debates. In a lot of ways, we need fewer debates online and more people going out into their community to make the change than they are actually looking for, because debating people online, it's not going to change their mind. And more often than not, it's only going to create a negative opinion of you as a person. So if you're somebody who has sincere beliefs and you want to do something to make a change, instead of battling with the people that you don't like, go out and build something. That's the message that we all need to look at, is what is it that I can do to build and invest in the future that I want to make right here today. It's so interesting. I just got out of a church discussion not that long ago, and one thing that I pointed out to the gentleman leading this Bible study was that, and he seemed to agree with this point, was that in the church, from his estimation, there wasn't enough people working to build church culture and build church institutions here in America. Well, that observation not only applies to what's going on in the church, but whatever political culture you want to create. So, hey, that's my 2 cents. Does that answer your question, Matt? Do you think that that's a solid solution, getting out there to build? Let me know right there in the chat. In the meantime, I asked a couple of silly questions. The legacy media relies on manufacturing outrage bait to keep you addicted to their shallow programming. Do you agree with this characterization? Most people says yes. And I moved on from the TV news. So I had 55 people, including Barry Fallon and Reed here, look at this post and say, yes, we've moved on from TV news. Well, if you have moved on, I'm asking you right now to go ahead and help independent thought, either by going to the Etsy page, or heck, just help us by donating your time and attention to growing Talk Politics. If we don't, we're not going to have a live political culture. We're not going to have people thinking independently and on their own. That's why I asked all the folks that are attending it and watching to subscribe and to engage with the show. Most of us are so frustrated about all the insane things that are going on. We're not spending time building up or lifting up those who are in a position or want to do something about it. Instead, we're trying to tear people down, slender them, throw dirt on them, when in reality, there's a lot of great people that we could be investing in. I'd like to think that I'm one. So I'd like, hey, donate your attention, donate your time to talk politics. You guys, we were also talking back on February 23rd about war with China. And I asked you guys, is war with China desirable? Now, 34 people apparently looked at this post, and I didn't have any answers saying that, yes, we conclusively want war with China. We need war with China. We need to invade them right now. Isn't that interesting? And yet, you have nobody that supports war with China. And yet that's all our politicians talk about. In fact, they just created a new subcommittee or select committee or something in the House to investigate or look at the great power competition between the United States and China in order to lay the foundation to justify war. And that's what's going on right now with your tax dollars. You have your politicians, instead of reading about how our government is supposed to function or to know what our republic is, they're instead focused on bashing the Chinese government, when in reality, our government functions more and more like the Chinese bureaucracy with every growing day. And you see this from the FBI censoring Elon Musk. You see it when the FBI can serve as private investigators for Ukraine, but they can't figure out who leaked Supreme Court documents. We can serve as the servant to any other country in the entire world, but we can't get our own problems fixed right here. And that's what's crazy. So hey, I'm interested in if you guys are still out there and alive and breathing, what are you guys' thoughts about war with China? Should we do it? If not, what's the alternative? If so, what exactly do you propose that we would get from winning a war with China? Let us know in the chat. But we're moving on to what else you guys are also talking about. Unpopular political positions. This is one of the most engaging and fun post we put out there. One person says that they're not an absolutist on the Second Amendment and that rapid fire weapons are not suitable for hunting or other civilian purposes and should be banned. Well, what an interesting take, because I don't think the Second Amendment refers to hunting or quote unquote other civilian purposes. The whole reason why we need a firearm isn't really just fundamentally because we have a right to defend ourselves, to alter or abolish a tyrannical regime, but it's there because we have a fundamental right, if you believe that God has granted people rights, to protect our own lives. That's why we need weapons. We don't need weapons to to do any of that other stuff. And an AR-15 could be one of the best tools to protect your life, depending on what the neighborhood is that you are in. If you're in urban Philadelphia, where there's a lot of gun violence, and you're a good law-abiding citizen who happens to be stuck in a bad spot, it would only be prudent that you would own an AR-15. Because if more than one attacker comes after you, you're going to need that rapid fire. Thomas mentions police are actually one of the only legitimate functions of government. I think that's a solid point. Larry mentions the government has some role in containing and reversing negative environmental externalities. And I think that's true, depending on the extent to which that goes. We may not need a whole environmental protection agency, that makes up rules to penalize farmers through the navigable waters of the U.S., but perhaps we need something else. And I also agree with Darlene and Matt's point. Matt says legalize marijuana nationwide, focus on opioids, or I should say, I mostly agree with Matt's point. I don't think it's the case that opioids alone, if we break down the data, are the source of the drug problems here in the U.S. In fact, most opioid deaths are the result of mixing opioids with something else, right? And we'll talk more about this in our national news segment, but it's also the case that it's not just illegal in immigration that's causing these drug problems, but it's the lack of legal immigration or the lack of legal pathways that are helping to contribute to these problems. We have an outdated visa system where people can't get a green card for 10, 20 years. And that's it's shocking, but that's correspondingly creating a drug problem. Hey, thank you all for hopping on. This is Zygmunt with Talk Politics, the only show where you don't just listen to the news, but help make it. If you are just joining us, we're just talking about Pulse of the People. It's talking about the issues that you guys want to talk about in our public Talk Politics group. If you have other questions, make sure to leave it in our chat. Darlene wanted to comment about, hey, we need to abolish the Fed and Department of Education, term limits, cut size of government in half, abolish alphabet agencies, and take all power away from federal government that is not specifically enumerated in the Constitution. I think I agree with that, with the caveat that term limits would only grow the size of government. That's one thing that more people need to move away from. Term limits are only going to grow the size of government. Like in California, California has term limits, and their government is not getting any smaller. Right? There's a number of other states that also had term limits that got rid of them because they have not been proven to be effective to get rid of the quote unquote career politician. Outside of that, yeah, we should get rid of these alphabet agencies to the extent that we can, because they are doing illegal things to meddle in private enterprise and to punish people like Elon Musk. Speaking of punishment, let's talk about a national divorce. This was a major topic when it was suggested by people like Marjorie Taylor Greene that we need a national divorce and that red states should split off from blue states. Now, I don't think that she exactly said that, but many other people had supported it. And well, the opinions out here were we lost a lot of citizens when it was attempted last time. I do not support a country breaking apart. And Bill mentioned that something has to be done, that Pennsylvania shouldn't be penalized by lawless cities. So some people are supporting this as a result of just the divisiveness between Republicans and Democrats in general. And the point that I made on the internet was that, or on specifically Twitter, was if you have a national divorce, you'll just end up with two big government nations in which you've really not reduced a single thing at all. So there would be no such thing as a national divorce if all it results in two big governments instead of just one, right? And this was actually one of the most viewed posts, but not a whole lot of commentary on it. So that's weird that things like that get traction, but hey, it is how it be, I suppose. We're also talking about taking responsibility for Medicare and Social Security. We were going to cover this last week. For whatever reason, the show didn't get out to people, but we covered it this week. Hey, Bill, good to have you back, buddy. We do do miss you. We're happy to have you here. And we're just taking the pulse of the people. So, talking about what it is that you want to talk about. If there's a particular discussion point that I haven't mentioned yet, go ahead and drop it in the chat, and we'll be happy to talk about that. In the meantime, we're talking about the fundamental truth that we covered earlier, that taxes will increase to fund out-of-date Medicare and Social Security programs. And what I wanted to ask you is who's going to take responsibility for this? Who is it? This is what's going to happen if people don't make a change fundamentally. And I'll be one of the people that'll say this right now, that this will happen. And you'll have not a single soul say, hey, this is my fault for increasing your taxes. People will blame it on all kinds of other people, and nobody will take responsibility. And that's the same reason why they don't even want to discuss the issue in the first place, is because most people lack the courage to be honest that this program is out of date, it needs modernized, and it's a penalty on young people fundamentally. We have a lot of people that say nasty things about young people and say that, well, millennials are entitled and millennials are this and that. And for sure, millennials has a demographic most certainly have a problem. But overall, it's just not true that they're more entitled than other people, because the people that are going to be receiving the entitlements without having to pay as many taxes are not going to be millennials or Generation Z or anybody like that. And there's not going to be anybody that's going to take responsibility for not taking action. And so we have millennials getting blamed left and right. Oh, well, you guys don't do this, you guys don't do that. And then people are turning around and saying, well, hey, we need to stop penalize millennials so that way maybe they can right the ship. And instead, they go along with supporting this broken program and spreading dishonest lies about it, like Republicans want to get rid of it. Or, well, it's something that you paid into. It's something that you have a right to. Hey, well, yeah, blame the state of Oregon. Yeah. I guess that's better than not blaming anybody at all. But hey, it's most definitely a problem. You can understand what it is or where it is that I'm coming from and saying that, hey, Social Security, Medicare are they're a problem. Ray, I think, added the correct answer. No one. Yeah. Yeah, I blame Andrew Bucci for that 1000%. Nobody will accept responsibility for this busted program. I said this stuff as a joke. I said, who do you think will accept responsibility for increasing taxes because of these broken programs? Honest and thoughtful politicians. I put that out there as a joke. and people honestly think that honest and thoughtful politicians will say, you know what? We screwed you guys up with this program, and well, we're going to make it right. People really think that. And well, if you're one of those people, I respect your opinion, but I really hope that you wake up to reality. Yeah, well, yeah, right. Do honest and thoughtful politicians exist? Right. Every politician is trying to get out there and demagogue us about some inflammatory issue or make up some nonsense while we bomb all these other countries, while we go into debt. Well, hey, in some cases, we even blow up a pipeline, perhaps, and lie about it. We have to be focused on all these other issues so that politicians can fundraise. They instead of talking honestly about the issues, they have to appeal to the fundraising class, because if they do, then if they lose, well, then they can get a book deal because they're in with the big fundraisers, and they can sell all these crappy books that shouldn't even be put on bookshelves. And that's really where it is that we are at. Now, Tim argues that, well, if Social Security was just placed into the same, or heck, if the government invested Social Security money into the same accounts that they do, perhaps it would work out better. And it's like, well, yeah, right. If we had mandatory private savings accounts, maybe that would work. That's what people think that Social Security is a mandatory private savings account. It's not. If it was, most people would have much more money. They'd have a rate of maybe 8% extra instead of the measly amounts that Social Security brings back. And hey, that's me getting on the soapbox about that particular issue. I think it's worth getting on the soapbox for, because people again aren't telling us the truth about Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security fundamentally. But that is the pulse of the people. That's what we talked about in the last couple of weeks. If you guys have another subject you want me to talk about, go ahead and drop it in the chat. In the meantime, until you guys get that in loaded up in the chat there, we will be moving on to national news and nonsense. So we're back. National news and nonsense. Get to see the clown show that, well, is what compromises most of our politics, or what most of our politics has devolved into. Hey, thank you, new people, for joining. We just moved from Pulse of the People, where we talk about what it is that you want to talk about, to our national news and nonsense segment on the show. Now, I have to disclose this to you guys because I was sitting there in church today, and the gentleman leading the discussion said that there's an obligation, okay, if you are a Christian or you are a religious person, to actually spread the good news. Now, I don't think that means the good news. I think that generally refers to the Bible. And heck, I wish I could do more of that. I wish that there was more good news to share with you, but unfortunately, at the national level, there is very little. Heck, in politics, there may not be any good news, because otherwise, if it was all good news, there wouldn't be any need for politics or politicians or people to solve any problems. So, well, I'd like to bring you good news, but this is politics. This is the world that we are in, and it's something that we all must confront and try to be honest about. Just like the FTC investigating Elon Musk internal communications. Now, while we're dragged into all kinds of culture war, from my perspective, nonsense, we have executive agencies, including the FTC, that are investigating private companies to stop them from being owned by people who support free speech. The FTC is retaliating against Elon Musk because he supports free speech, because he kicked out, he used his own funds, he whipped up a bunch of people together. Now they want to investigate him and hit him with all these fines and fees. As it says here in this article from the Wall Street Journal, in 12 letters sent to Twitter and its lawyers since Musk's October 27 takeover, the FTC also asked the company to identify all journalists granted access to company records and to provide information about the launch of the revamped Twitter Blue subscription service, the documents show. Yeah, no, that's right. Twitter is a much better platform now. Actually, before Elon Musk took over, I would get these posts in my Twitter feed about political views that I didn't care for. And it would just show them over and over and over and over and over again under every single category. It would say, like, this is about tech. And it would be like the most radical person barely talking about tech and then trying to make a political point. And it would show me stuff like that all the time, even though I pressed block every single time for these recommendations of these radical people that I don't support. It just kept doing it. Now, under Musk, it doesn't do that. And so now, because of that, we have to have the FTC come in and do a investigation. We are concerned that these staff reductions impact Twitter's ability to protect consumer information. Okay. So if you fire people, if you're a privately held company and you fire people, well, now the FTC has to investigate you because, well, we don't know if you're going to be able to protect people's private data. Yeah, right. You know, how can anybody honestly take this seriously? The FTC is conducting a rigorous investigation into Twitter's compliance with a consent order that came into effect long before Musk purchased the company. Okay. So so he even did he even give consent to the consent order? Did he even look at that to start with? But now all of a sudden they have to do it. Andrew asks, is the FTC trying to assert more dominance and expand their power than they are setting up a precedent? We did this to Twitter, and so we have to do this to you. Yeah, that's exactly right. That's what the problem is. And that's why I get so frustrated, because we have people talking about culture war stuff when we have the federal government trying to more or less threaten Twitter to get rid of free speech. And these executive agencies do this all the time, and there's never any scrutiny about it because it's a little more technical of an issue than whatever the inflammatory thing of the day is. But there should be a focus of anybody who cares about free speech, who cares about our republic. Things like this ought to be a focus. You have these alphabet agencies from the FTC, the FBI, the DOJ, the EPA, the Department of Education. They can do anything that they want to do. And Congress doesn't look at it, and ordinary people don't look at it because, well, this doesn't affect me. Well, yeah, it doesn't affect you today. But if you can't exercise your right to free speech on Twitter because of the FTC, then it will. Right? There is no logic. See this, and so now you have Republicans in investigating this, and they make the point that anybody should make. There's no logical reason why the FTC needs to know the identities of journalists engaging with Twitter. Why would they? Why would they? And so the leader of this group, or the appointee, Ms. Khan, declined to discuss specifics of the case. Okay. And she needs to make sure that the FTC fully enforces the orders that are on the books. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, no, that's right, Sean. Right. Alphabet soup sucks. And see, people talk about big government. It's not, when we think about big government, we shouldn't just really be concerned about the size and inefficiency of Congress, but these agencies are really what big government is, because they have much more discretion and ability to act than what Congress does. And so when people are jumping up and down about big government, they ought to say, hey, this is the FTC's problem. Let's get rid of the FTC, the DOJ, the FBI, the CIA, particularly when they're threatening free speech for no reason. And most people in the public don't even look at it. And that's just one bit of the national nonsense that's going on. Just like, and this is important, and this is really worth thinking about. Okay, Congress will invite people to testify about whatever is going on, and then apparently in some cases they'll just make fun of people and just shut them down before they're even able to testify. So now, okay, in addition to these corrupt federal agencies, we have a Congress that does these show trials to embarrass and humiliate scholars for ostensibly no democratic reason. And in that context, I'm speaking about, there's a gentleman named David Beer, or I think it's Beyer, I'm not sure. And he was going to testify about illegal immigration, because right now the prevailing false narrative is that, as he mentions, well, we're the most generous country in the world when it comes to immigration. Well, so this guy David is saying, well, no, he points to a chart saying, no, we're actually not the most generous. We're not the most generous place when it comes to immigration. I mean, look at all these other places that are far, far ahead of us. Then you have people in Congress saying, well, we need to arrest you, David, and we need to arrest you in Mayorkas for fentanyl deaths. Well, this scholar has nothing to do with it. In fact, the reason why fentanyl deaths spiked, if you were to listen to this guy's testimony, was that when you had the borders closed, that's when the fentanyl deaths increased. 2020, we can see right here, fentanyl, other stuff, right? Right here in 2020, this is when non-essential travel ban was enforced. 2020. Okay. And yet we're not even allowed to have this narrative or have this conversation because these stooges in Congress are just going to come in and start yelling at people for no reason. You're paying people six figures to come in and start yelling at people that are scholars or trying to present useful information. Just like what the scholar is saying here, fentanyl smuggling became more prevalent after most legal travel was banned. Okay, here's the line. Before, after, before, after. And then, people like Dan Bishop blaming this scholar, mass illegal immigration is what you wanted. No, that's not true. Nobody, this guy has never said that. And so if you're listening and you're not frustrated by people in Congress humiliating scholars and having show trials, then I don't know what to say. Now, Andrew mentions, quite honestly, this is why we need more podcasts like this and people like you, Zig. Our media once held our elected and appointed officials to such a high standard. Now they just skim the water and don't truly dive into what's going on, unless it goes against their narrative and agenda. Big government is becoming worse by the day, and there's zero accountability. Sean mentions the weaponization of the government against private companies and citizens isn't going to happen. It's already here. Yeah, right. That's exactly the problem. And then so you have the problem of we have a weaponized government, and then we have these show trials that are just designed to humiliate scholars to make it such that there's no way to communicate with government. You can't communicate with them because the FTC is shutting down free speech. People in Congress only want to have these silly fundraisers about culture war ideas, and then scholars say, hey, hold up, this is what's going on. And then these people would rather just yell at scholars. And then that really shouldn't be tolerated. And it's something that everybody should feel ashamed of. We have a Congress that just embarrasses its own citizens for no reason. It's 100% disgusting. And heck, people wonder why doesn't Congress have high approval ratings for stuff like that? Just like, well, this is another reason why they too also shouldn't have high approval ratings. This is actually written by a guy named Max Boot, who was a never Trump guy. Not many people like him. I don't think I like him that much, although I guess I don't know him and I don't read most of his stuff because a lot of it's probably hokey, middle of the water junk, like most journalism is. But hey, he was at least courageous to point out, hey, Democrats and Republicans agree on China, and that's a problem. And basically what he goes on to highlight is that, again, as I've mentioned time and time again right here on the show, these guys are trying to prepare us for a fake war, not a fake war, but have the justifications of which be trumped up or somewhat fake with China. It says, and that's the point that he goes on. Well, to make, while people are not mentioning the benefits of trade with China, as he points out here. So there was this big testimony about all the damage that China's doing and this and that, but they never talked about what's actually going on. Completely unmentioned were the benefits of trade with China. The U.S.-China Business Council notes American companies exported $192 billion worth of goods and services to China in 2021, constituting 7.5% of U.S. exports. Exports to China support over 1 million U.S. jobs. Okay, see, right. isn't that worth noting? Exports to China support over 1 million US jobs. So the only story that you're allowed to hear about is, well, China's stealing all these crappy manufacturing jobs that people don't want to work in anyhow. But you don't hear exports to China support over 1 million US jobs. That's a problem, right? If you can understand how this is fundamentally a problem of our media, our politicians, and our lack of scholars and people willing to be honest and stand up and do the right thing, then I don't know what to tell you. And that is the general gist. Has he observes the purpose of this alleged investigation in China is to communicate to our colleagues and the American people why the Chinese Communist Party is a threat. And as he correctly notes, the problem today isn't that Americans are insufficiently concerned about the rise of China. The problem is that they are prey to hysteria and alarmism that could lead the U.S. into a needless nuclear war. Okay, so that's exactly right. We're making all this stuff up. Well, what if China invades here? What if they take over our economy? What if they bring all these secret agents here? Well, none of that stuff is going to happen. But moreover, we used to have a way of dealing with problems in China called the World Trade Organization that ruled in our favor 92% of the time. We had a built-in diplomatic system, a rules-based order to handle that problem. And now all we get is more and more alarmism. But hey, speaking of alarmism, I want to raise the alarm on this. If you are listening, go to etsy.com/shop/talking politics and get a mug. If you don't get a mug, we're gonna be in a war with China. We're gonna be in endless war. The only way to bring world peace is to buy ceramic mugs. That's right, you heard it here. The only way to buy world peace is to buy ceramic mugs. You can get 11-ounce ceramic mugs for $15 and help save the world by helping to put out good content. With each mug that's bought, I'm able to reach an additional approximately 100 people that I wouldn't be able to reach otherwise, because I'm not creating all this alarmist BS nonsense. So hey, support us, etsy.com/shop/talking politics. We also got this cool shirt straight out of the grassroots. If you're a proud grassroots warrior like me, you'll love having that shirt. But nonsense, hey, we're back into the realm of nonsense, or back into the realm of our national news here. In that, we have the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. So I don't know if you had been following up with the Nord Stream 2 pipeline debacle, but if you have been, it started off the Nord Stream 2 is a pipeline that goes from Russia down to Germany. Okay. And what had happened was you had people saying that Russia blew up this pipeline to Germany. Okay. Yeah, okay. You had American news outlets saying that Russia blew up their own pipeline to Germany. Now, to amplify the reason why the pipeline is important, and again, thank you all who have just joined. I'm just talking about the Nord Stream pipeline and the latest nonsense about that. So the reason why the Nord Stream 2 pipeline was significant to start with was because Russia relied on the transportation of a lot of natural gas to be able to fund their war efforts, to help fuel their economy, and it was a major source of revenue for them as a nation. And they had that pipeline go from Russia down to Germany, and it got stalled, and I don't think it was totally completed. And then the war broke out, and then you had U.S. officials. Well, somebody blew this pipeline up. One journalist said that the United States blew it up. At this point, I think that that's what the most plausible conclusion is. But people in the United States were saying that Russia blew up its own pipeline. Okay, so we have, and to amplify even further, if you're a country and you blow up a major asset of another country, that's like you're declaring war, right? That's what it is. That's going on. Now we have Germans saying that that they have searched the boat that could have been used to blow up this pipeline. Well, if you can get the boat, how can you not identify the people, right? And here's more nonsense. A German newspaper, Design, I think it translates into the time or the times, said the attack had been carried out by 5 men and a woman who rented a yacht using false passports. Wow, isn't that crazy? Okay, so this whole international controversy and about a pipeline that could escalate war between Russia and Ukraine and get us involved in nuclear war. That could, the damage to that, they're saying, and they're saying this seriously, was done by just 5 men and a woman. Okay, so we in America hardly have the resources to shoot down a balloon. Now the balloon was probably harmless, and in my mind, probably shouldn't have been shot down. But in the United States, we can't shoot down a balloon, but we're supposed to believe that 5 men and a woman just rented a yacht. Which, if they rented a yacht, they had to pay with some kind of money that could be traced, presumably. So this is the nonsense that we're fed. Yeah, I hope they run some scuba suits along with the boat. Yeah, how that happens is inexplicable. There's really no way to even understand how apparently 5 random people can just blow up a pipeline. How does that make any sense? It's stuff like that that goes on without any discretion. Right here, we have a collection of stories. I'm not going to dive into these specific stories, but really I just wanted to highlight the different headlines. One is Ukraine needs more weapons and support. As long as Putin wants war, seeking a peace settlement is a fantasy. And Russia and China challenge U.S.-led world order. Now, if you look at the timeline, yeah, if 5 men and a woman blew up the Nordstream pipeline, in a way, yeah, that's impressive in a weird way. But it's fundamentally crazy. So we have 3 stories from the Wall Street Journal, and all about 2 of them were on the same day, and then this one was on the next day, and all of these operate under hidden assumptions that try to get us to lobby for more war. Ukraine needs more weapons. Well, as long as Putin wants war, we can't go for peace. And then, Russia and China are challenging the U.S.-led world order. Well, that's not totally true. Russia and China aren't challenging us for anything. Russia doesn't have a great economy at this point, and China is going to be headed for an entitlement problem, the same problem we have here. As long as Putin wants war, see, this presumes that Putin does want war. Is that what he's totally saying? Is he saying that he just wants war for war's sake, or is he saying something else? This is one way that they mischaracterize people to feed us a bunch of nonsense to get people blown up in war. Just like making sure Russia loses the best long-term investment we can make in global security. How see, it's headlines like this and commentary and crap like this. How does this make any sense? That's not true. And at this point in time, if we want to invest in global security, we need to make sure that advanced nations are able to get out from underneath the vast entitlement problems that we have, so we have the resources to help other countries, right? The best long-term investment we can make in global security, okay, is getting us out from underneath all this vast global debt, and then also perhaps investing in the infrastructure of places, of continents like like Africa, because then if we invest in the infrastructure there, those citizens can be safe from whatever weather happens, whatever event. Things like that would be a better long-term investment in global security. In fact, if this is going to escalate, if sending more money to China, or forgive me, sending more money to Ukraine leads Russia to further align with China, and then we're hostile to China, and say and we say, well, the Chinese suck, we hate you guys, we're mad that you gave us all these free goods and all this free labor, that would escalate problems. That would make global security worse, because Russia and China would be more secure, along with India would probably align with Russia and China, as well as Iran. So now you've created a whole new, I won't say axis of evil, but let's say axis of discontents, because you insist on dumping money into Ukraine when we should be doing more to go for a diplomatic solution. And people can say, well, the United States goes for diplomatic solutions. That's not always true. That certainly hasn't been true in this decade. And when you have people like Lindsey Graham saying this, it's hard to believe that we're really going for diplomatic, non-military solutions. Graham says he will introduce bill to set the stage for U.S. to use military force in Mexico. Okay, wow. Well, so we're conning people into believing that the United States is a force of peace and love, and meanwhile we want to use force on pretty much every country in the world, and that's why other countries go along with China and Russia and thinking that communism and socialism is good, because they're not being bombed by those countries. Now, of course, Ukraine is, but China really isn't launching any big, large-scale wars at all. So that's the nonsense of war. That's the stage that's being set. We have people saying Biden must resist calls to give Zelensky all that he wants, and heck, it'd be kind of pathetic if Biden did give Zelensky all that he wants when he doesn't give us anything we want, unless people want inflation and debt and a crappy job outlook and a busted housing market. That's all we get from them. Now, yeah. So that, I suppose, is all we got for national news and nonsense. I hope that was worth going through for you, and I hope you guys can at least understand at the very least the bigger picture of what our problems are. Okay, we're agitating for war in foreign countries, and then we have the FTC and all these other agencies trying to strip away our rights, and then we're also accruing unsustainable debt in which we will have to pay for. So when you combine all those, the three of those factors, debt, the administrative state, the alphabet agencies, and then also agitating for war with other countries, if you think that under those conditions we're going to have free speech, your kids are going to be in a good place, your grandkids are going to be in a good place, that's a lie. I'm here to tell you that as long as those conditions exist, all that's false. Nothing is going to get better for you. You shouldn't expect it to get better for you. And if you're starting to understand these problems, you should be called to take action. You should feel called to tell those in Congress, hey, I don't want more war. Hey, I want you to be honest about the entitlement crisis. Hey, I want you to be honest with these agencies that are operating unconstitutionally, right? And that doesn't have to be a Republican or Democrat thing. And it's not a Republican or Democrat thing to say we don't need to be involved in war. It's not a Republican or Democrat thing to say, well, we don't need these agencies. And it shouldn't be a Republican versus Democrat thing to say this debt is not sustainable. That doesn't have to be partisan. And if you're insisting otherwise, you are so far in the wrong, And shame on you. And shame on you if you are a person who supports war, if you support these illegal audits from the FTC, and if you support accruing all this debt. Now, I know why people do, because then they can get donor dollars and a false sense of prestige and a claim to be worshipped by the donor class and get all these crappy book deals. But that's not for the advancement of humanity. That's not for the advancement of people in general. That's a scam. That's people being duped. Okay, that's people being duped. And just as much as people need to get out of that, people to some degree need to have an honest position with themselves and religion. We have people that worship government, and they worship the government that justifies this exact nonsense that's going on right now. And instead, if they were more honest about their faith, that they even had faith at all, maybe they would go back to church. Maybe they would go back to having faith in God to take care of their problems. Maybe they would go back to having faith in their family. Who knows? But the bottom line is, the worst thing of all to worship is a government that's stripping away our civil liberties while telling us it's protecting our rights. That's crazy. And that's what I got. Pete says, hey, thanks for speaking the truth, and it doesn't make sense. Well, hey, thank you guys. I've been working hard to put this show together. I didn't have a great turnout this last week, but I do know that for those who have joined, you probably helped me set a record for most minutes viewed. So this small milestone in the grand scheme of things has a major significance to me as a person, because, well, I want people to know what's going on. It's not about me getting a big deal from CNN or Fox News or Joe Blow or whatever. I don't care about that. I just want people to know what's going on. And so I appreciate you guys. It's been a great stream, great conversation. Good to have all you guys. And until next time, we'll see y'all next Tuesday, or forgive me, next Wednesday at 8:30. Hopefully every Wednesday at 8:30 on Talk Politics. Until next time.